Hey gamers, welcome back to the table. My name is Mike. Today on the channel we are going to be painting some minis from the expansion of Mice and Mystics Downwood Tales. And more specifically, one of the models that we're painting is called the frogladites. Here it is. Really great detail on these models. Amazing print job. But they come in a standard yellow, so today we're going to give them some life. Going to start with some wog flesh. It's a Citadel color green. We're just going to use it as a base coat for all of the frog's skin and just give it a quick down and dirty glaze. We're not going to care. We're not going to be too careful about it. We're just going to get that paint on as fast as possible, covering all the places that we want to be green eventually. I did do the lily pad before this. I forgot I was going to do a tutorial on my painting, so that's why the lily pad is already done. I basically just base coated it green and then painted the little spaces in there pink. So that's the only part that I did previous to this. But right now I'm just going to get sloppy. I don't even care if I don't even need a full coverage on this. Just going to get it on there as quick as possible. Once that's done, we're going to move on. We're going to go with the baller brown, and that is just going to be used for the gloves and the armor that the frog is wearing. Again, we're not going to really care about too much about keeping it within the lines. We're just getting that color on as quickly as possible and just getting it saturated. And if you're happy with the progress that you've made, like I am, I feel like I've done a pretty good job getting most of it. I'm going to move on to the darker brown, the Morphine Brown, as a accent color. I'm going to use it on the belts and some of the cross pieces, as well as the staff that he's holding. As we get more colors on, I'm going to be a little bit more careful as I get this one through. I'm going to skip a couple of spots here in the back that I forgot about that I'll pick up later. But the base thing on this one is that you just want to get that color in there as well as possible and try not to cause too much work for later on. So we're going to finish up this, and then we're going to go ahead and do the belts that are on him and move on from there. I realized I forgot to do the legs, so I'm going to paint those green now and get that base coat on. I'm just going to quick do that, get that color on there, and then move on. Feeling pretty happy with how it looks now. I'm going to move on to the lead belcher. There's just a little piece on the edge of his spear that needs some metallic paint. Give it a little bit of a shine there. Go ahead and touch it up. Try not to get it on the staff as best as possible. Get the front and the back. Just give it that little extra shine. There's some pieces that I missed, but we're going to move on to the feet. So we're going to go ahead and Troll Slayer orange. I like this bright orange for the feet because it just kind of gives a nice contrast, especially with the base that I do on these later. So I'm just going to slop this paint on as best as possible. Going to meet that green somewhere around the ankle, or where I would assume the ankle would be, and then I'm just going to slop it on into the base to get it in between the toes. I'm going to show you how I cover that up after I do this. If you're not going to base it later, then you are going to have to be a lot more careful, but I plan on... But I plan on doing a kind of a watery base to it, so I'm just going to go ahead and get it in as best as possible and just get that color saturated. Alright, there it is, looking pretty good. So we've just got the base colors right now. Everything is looking pretty tight. There's still some white spots, but I'm not going to worry about those. I am going to go ahead now and use the Null Oil shade. Just give the whole thing a wash. It's going to add depth to those recesses and just kind of make the model pop a little bit more than it currently is. I just use a crappy brush that I have to just be able to just slop it on there. As you're going through, don't worry about it if it gets a little bit too thick in some areas. Just go ahead and do the entire model, and as you go, what you're going to do, if there are areas that it pulls, you just get a dry brush and just press it to that area. It'll soak up that extra wash for you. Just get the whole thing. We're going to go back over it and lighten it up in just a minute. We're going to let the wash set for just a minute. We're going to go ahead and do the red. We're going to do the eyes and the sun's correct. For those eyes. Nice. Right there. Alright, as I've got the wash done, I'm being a little bit more careful now. I'm not going to want to go back over this too much, but I am going to brighten it up, so if I get a little bit of red somewhere, I'll be okay, but I just be a little bit more careful now from this point on. Looking good. Alright, moving on to the medium green. This is a green that I'm using. You don't have to use these colors, you can use just a dark, medium, and then light tone. What I'm going to do with this one is I'm going to just go over the green areas, about 60% of it. I want to keep the lighter areas where the light's going to hit it is where I'm going to get it, and where the light is not going to be, I'm going to try to leave it that dark green. Sorry about that. Bring it back into focus. There we go. So just hit the tops of everything and then leave the recesses, the most deep recesses, that dark green. We want those warts to pop and the eyes to pop and everything, so we're just going to keep it to the top of the model. The top of the arms, top of the legs, top of the head. Alright, that's looking pretty good. I'm going to go ahead and go back to the lily pad. And again, just about 60% of the lily pad is going to get this medium green. We're going to keep the bottom portion of it, that dark green, and we're going to do our best to blend it in as we go. We We may have to add a little bit of water, may have to grab a little bit of dark green a little bit later. But we're just going to go ahead and do that top 60% with this. Pretty good for now. Let's move on to the brown. We're going to go back and brighten that up. Now that the null oil is all dried and set, we're going to go ahead and brighten up those flat spots one more time, hitting the chest and those thighs, making sure that all the flat spots are nice and bright, giving us that good contrast. There's some really neat detail over here on the shoulders, so as I do this one, I want to make sure I don't get any more brown into that little X, that leather work. I'm going to keep pulling this out of focus. I'm sorry, guys. Now that I'm happy with that, I'll go ahead and do the same thing with the dark brown. I can see now that I missed a couple of spots, so I'm going to go ahead and tidy those up right here. Forgot to get those in the first round. I'm just going to fill it in as best as possible, making sure that I don't nick anything else with this dark brown. And now that I'm happy with that, I feel like it looks pretty good. I'm going to move on to the really light green. I'm using the moot green for this. On this one, I just really want to make sure that I catch the edges of things. I'm going to use the very little bit of paint on my brush. Just use the side to go ahead and catch those edges, make where the light would catch it the most. So eyelids and that nose area, maybe the top lip a little bit. And then what I'm going to do after this, once this is done, I'm going to go ahead and dry out the brush and to get it nice and dry, and then I'm going to use it to kind of just shade it all in and just like that. I'm going to go ahead and fan it out so that we get a little bit better transition and it's not so bright. You're not going to want to do much on this one, maybe 30% on this. I feel like that's a good number for that. And you're going to hit the top of the head. You're going to hit the top of the arms and legs just to give it a little bit of depth. I want to go ahead and hit the tops of these warts a little bit just to make them pop. It's tough to see on this camera, but they really pop once you get that bright green on top of them. Flip it over, do the same thing with the lily pad. We're just going to get the top of the lily pad again, just a real small portion of it because we don't want a bunch of this to go. We don't want this to be too bright. I do a little bit too much on this one, and I try to blend it and I mess it up, so I have to kind of
massage it a little bit. But overall, you get the idea. Yeah, see, there you go. Messed it up. So I'm going to have to darken it out a little bit, which I will do. And it'll get a little bit better. That looks pretty good. Alright, so as I was doing this, I noticed I forgot the back of the shell. And I kind of wanted it to pop. So I'm going to use the same color that I used the eyes. That Eagle Sun Scarlet. I think that'll tie it in nicely. Kind of give it a nice match back there. It's going to be a little bit bright at the beginning right here. So as I put it on, I'm just going to let it dry, and then I'll hit it with the wash again, just to kind of dump it down so it's not so bright. Looking pretty good. Let's do the base. So I said we just slopped that orange on, and now we're going to cover it up. I've got 3 different blues that I'm going to use. This dark blue, medium blue, Thousand Suns, and then a light blue, which I'm going to use right here. It is the Temple Guard blue. And then I've got a gray that I'm also going to use just to give it a little bit different texture to it. So I don't make these super perfect. I just kind of give it the flavor because it's a fairy tale and it's Wonderland and all that jazz. So I'm going to take that little brush in the dark blue and slide it between the toes so that I can get that color in there. I'm going to use the dark blue as a base for most of this as I go through, trying to make sure that I have a decent amount of color but not too much so that it doesn't spill up onto the toes. We want to keep that blue and orange as separate as possible. So here we go. We'll just do the other foot, sliding that paintbrush in between the toes to get the blue in there. And like I said, I'm just going to kind of wash it on there. I'm not even going to really worry about good coverage. I just want these colors to kind of mix on the base. And I'm using my thumb apparently. So we're going to get that out of the way. And then we just switch to a different color. And like I said, I'm just going to swirl it around, just kind of give it a water feel to it. We are in a fantasy land and we're playing mice fighting frogs. So it doesn't have to be perfect. I just want the color. So. So you just keep going until you're happy with it. Overall, I'm pretty happy with the way these models turned out. This is a quick down and dirty way of doing it. I really enjoy the colors. I really enjoy the models. I thought it adds a ton of life to the board. I know my kids love it as well. And yeah, let me know what you think. Let me know if it works for you and if you did it. Like I said, there's 6 of them, and it takes me about 45 minutes to do all 6. This is the finished project. Happy gaming, guys. We'll see you on the next one.